Good evening. Welcome to Northern Maine Productions. We're going to attempt to do a video on C6 light bulbs. As you can see here, I have a collection of bulbs here. Have you ever asked yourself why there are so many of these things still around? You know, I've often wondered that. I mean, these things, you don't usually just find one or two of them. You usually find groups of them together, 10, 15 bulbs, 20. I bought a collection of these one time that had over 100 in them. Um, well, the answer I think is pretty simple. I mean, people, these were introduced in 1920. The very first ones were smooth cone light bulbs that looked like that. This is not a GE version, but for all intents and purposes, the GE bulb looked almost identical to that. The paint was a little bit different, but you know, I think in the first 10 years from 1920 to 1930, literally billions of these bulbs were made, and probably many of them never saw their end of life. I mean, people typically only put their tree up for 1 or 2 days back in those days because they were using real trees, and it was very dangerous for them to dry out and have these little bulbs on them that blaze at high temperature. So obviously these bulbs evolved a lot over the years. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. This is about a 1922 or 1923 version. This one has the angled flutes on the glass. It says GE Mazda made in the USA around the base of the bulb. Has a brass base, and the envelope of this bulb is actually just a little bit larger than the newer C6. This is actually a C6 and a half. These look pretty good. The colors are pretty pale on them when lit up. I have two of these here. I have a blue one and a red one. I'm going to bring this chart up here and just to kind of... This is a chart that I put together several years ago. You can probably kind of ignore the dates on these. These examples here show the printing around the base of the glass. I'm hoping that that's showing up on the screen. I'm trying to blow these up as big as possible. The printing around the base of the glass obviously came out in... I have it marked on here as 1924, but I think it was a little bit earlier than that. The smooth cone ones had printing around the base of the glass. So in according to what I'm reading, 1924, they came out with the straight flutes on these. Now, who knows when exactly they did that? I've read some accounts of it happened in 1929, so who really knows? But I have a few of those straight-sided. That's a straight fluted bulb. It's got the Mazda USA printed on the base of the bulb. Now, another thing I wanted to look at is look at the difference in the colors over the years. These are the earliest examples with a flat paint on them. Even in 1933 or 34, and some people say 1938, the Mazda, the name, they changed to the block logo, the stacked block logo. It actually says GE Mazda made in the USA. I got a little fly buzzing around here, bugging me. Then in apparently in 1949, they come out with a semi-gloss paint, which was a little bit shinier, but the colors weren't as rich. Apparently they used that from 1949 to 1955, and you'll also notice that up until that point they all had brass bases on them. From what I understand, again, it's conflicting information, it's hard to say, but the brass base went away, I guess, in 1954. Then in 1956, General Electric introduced gloss paint on their bulbs and aluminum bases. And they also used the GE block logo. Just simply said GE. Now if you look at this one, this one's G, it's got G period, E period. But if you look at this bulb here, it's G-E. I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't know if they were manufactured in different plants or what. And according to information out there on the lines or on the internet, in 1957 or 58, they came out with the meatball logo on these bulbs. Those seem to be pretty common, you know. Even in the 1950s, there were still a lot of people using these bulbs, even though they were, you know, by the 1950s, the writing was on the wall for the GE C6, for any of the C6 bulbs. I mean, then again, we're going back to why there are still so many of these around, and that is because people paid dearly for early Christmas lights. C6 light bulbs were expensive in the 1920s and 30s. And of course, the Great Depression was on and people just couldn't afford very much. So whenever people bought stuff like this, and only probably got used 1 or 2 days a year, and then it got taken off the tree and put away in the, you know, in boxes, you know. Oftentimes the bulbs didn't make their way back to their original boxes, but, you know, sometimes people, if they had 3 or 4 boxes of bulbs kicking around their place, the bulbs went back in the boxes and the strings went back in their packages. Sometimes with bulbs and sometimes without, but it's very evident that people took pains and took care to take care of those old strings of lights. And I mean, that's very evident because you can find, you know, so many of these old strings from back in those days still in their original boxes. I've got several of them. And then of course, you know, later on when the C7s came along and they were cheaper and easier to obtain, I think a lot of times these old C6 strings and bulbs just got shuttled into storage up in the attics, and people just forgot about them, and they stayed there in people's attics for decades. And that seems to be the ongoing thing, you know, with the collectors. I mean, people are dying off now, and estate sales are happening, and people over the last 10 or 15 or 20 years even have just unleashed just a mammoth amount of these bulbs and strings, you know, from estate sales. That's where I've got most of this stuff from. So we'll move ahead and look at some different pictures of these. This is a good up-close shot of the printing around the base. These are the earliest style of fluted cone bulbs. This one here is actually a Westinghouse bulb, and I actually found that bulb the other day. And these photographs I took, they were pretty close to 10 years old now. I put some of this stuff together when I first started collecting these. let's go with this. This is the stacked Mazda logo. It's a good up close shot of them if you could see that. This was predominant from 1934 until 1941, 45. I mean, GE stopped using the Mazda name after World War II, so let's go. This is one of those early, that's not a very good picture. I tried to get a good picture of this bulb, but I couldn't. That's one of them, that's that earliest. This is actually, this light bulb is lit up, and you can see in here that you can kind of make out the Mazda USA logo that's printed around the base of the glass. It's very hard to see in some of these sockets. This is the stacked GE Mazda logo. This is predominant from the early 30s clear up to World War II. This was the post-war GE logo. This was predominant from 1946 or 7 clear up through into the 50s, the mid 50s, and of course this is the more modern meatball logo. This is actually the very last iteration of the C6 light bulbs. But anyways, I'll go back through these and just bring this up here. So, you know, if you find anything like this with a Mazda name on it, it's old. And it will have, you know, the flat painted light bulbs like that in it. You won't find any gloss light bulbs in a Mazda box. I mean, oftentimes you find these boxes, but they've got newer bulbs in them, and vice versa. Sometimes you find newer boxes with older bulbs in them. I've got a whole variety. This box was manufactured in 1936. If you open the flap up on the bottom of this, you'll find that it says 36 right there. That apparently is a date code on them. And this one is even older. This one's got different coloring on it. I believe this one says 1932. So these are quite old. By 1957 they were packaging bulbs in these. This is actually, I believe, a 1957 pack. You'll note it's got a meatball logo on it. They're green and red. After 57 till sometime in the early 60s they came in packs like this. They were green. I think these are from around 1960 or 61. I have two of them here. Now, starting in 64 or 5, you'd find them bulbs in packs like this, and I believe that this was the pack they used clear till the end of production of the General Electric bulbs. I have these ones down here on this bottom row are the meatball logo style ones from the late 50s clear up into the 70s. This style here is the 1956-57 style. And these matte colored bulbs with the brass bases on this row here would be from the post-war era. It'd be from, you know, like 1946 to 1949, maybe even a little later. Well, yeah, they'd cover clear up to 1954, I guess, or 55. And obviously this row up here is the 1930s style. The blue colors varied a little bit, and the green colors varied some too. Sometimes the older greens were a little darker. I prefer this style bulb, the 1930 style ones. They had the best coloring on them. They had the richest, most beautiful colors. The blues were just phenomenal. The blues were just a deep cobalt blue color. Let me see. This is some newer box designs. These are post-war boxes. I don't really know what year they are, but I can tell you that they're pre-zip codes because they've still got the Cleveland 12 Ohio. These are probably early to mid 50s maybe. There were just so many different styles of these boxes. They actually made boxes that were painted a dark blue color with white or yellow printing on them too. I think that this box here is probably, this is not marked Mazda, so this is probably a post-war box, probably right after World War II. This even has the correct color blue light bulbs in it. This is a pre-war box. Would have been exactly the same as this one. This one's kind of got chewed up a little, but this one says Mazda on this one, so this was probably made just before World War, right around the time of World War II. If you have a good place to store your loose bulbs, one of these old little cabinets with these little drawers in them work very well to store your loose C6 light bulbs. I have many of them. Obviously, we're not going to go too deeply into the imported bulbs, but I do have some packs of new imported C6s. These are probably from the 60s and the 70s. These ones in these two packs are brand new mint bulbs. These ones came from the Sprouse Reitz company in Portland, Oregon. Obviously there is many more different kinds of packaging, and also I have another thing here to show you. If you come across a bulb that has the USA logo printed on the glass, congratulations, you have found a very rare Hudson light bulb. These were manufactured for a very short time at some point in time. I can't find any information on the Hudson Bulb Company, so I'm assuming probably in the 1940s or 50s probably. But anyway, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions about these light bulbs or anything, I'll try to help you out as much as I can. I've tried as hard as I can to find the most accurate information to put out there, but information's hard to find, and you'll find a lot of information that's wrong and some that's right and some that's half right online, and that's really the only way you can find that stuff nowadays. I mean, I've done my best. My memory's not as good as it used to be, so please don't fry me in the comment section if you can help it. Oh yeah, I was going to show you, in the 1950s General Electric came out with a pink light bulb too. You don't find them very often. I believe also when they came out with these 4-pack light bulbs, I believe the white bulbs went away for the most part in the 1960s. I don't have very many white light bulbs here at all. In fact, I could not even find a white one here that has the Meatball logo on it. So anyway, I've tried as hard as I could to present this, so thank you for watching and have yourself a good evening. Good night.